8 years. Nearly 3,000 videos. Millions of words recorded, uploaded, and watched by strangers around the world. For years, he invited people into his life through a simple camera lens. He showed his morning routines. He talked about his dreams. He shared his thoughts, his frustrations, and the ordinary moments most people would forget. To everyone watching, he was just another person documenting his life online. A normal creator. A familiar face. Someone thousands of viewers felt they knew. But years later, when detectives began investigating a shocking disappearance, they returned to those old videos. And what they found changed the entire case. Because hidden among years of ordinary conversations were moments that suddenly seemed different. A sentence that sounded harmless. A location nobody questioned. A strange pattern nobody noticed. At the time, viewers saw a man sharing his life. But investigators wondered something much more disturbing. Was he revealing pieces of the truth long before anyone knew there was a mystery? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our upcoming mysteries. Because what detectives eventually discovered inside those videos would force everyone to look back at 8 years of content in a completely different way. Before anyone connected the videos to a crime, there was nothing unusual about the man behind the camera. His name was Daniel Vale. To his viewers, Daniel was simply a young content creator who had built a loyal audience by sharing pieces of his everyday life. Unlike many online personalities who chased attention through controversy, Daniel's channel grew quietly. There were no dramatic moments, no shocking headlines, no attempts to become famous overnight. Just a camera, a room, and thousands of conversations with people he had never met. Every morning, he recorded. Sometimes he talked about his plans for the day. Sometimes he discussed personal struggles. Sometimes he simply sat in front of the camera and spoke about random thoughts that crossed his mind. His followers appreciated the honesty. They felt like they were watching someone real. Someone who was not pretending to have a perfect life. Over the years, his audience grew from a few hundred people to thousands. Viewers began recognizing his routines. They knew the places he visited. They knew the stories he repeated. Some fans even described his videos as a digital diary of an entire decade. But there was one question nobody thought to ask. Why did Daniel feel the need to record almost everything? At first, it seemed like dedication. Many creators document their lives online. Many people share personal moments with strangers. But when investigators later reviewed the timeline of Daniel's uploads, they noticed something unusual. The recordings did not just show what happened. They showed what Daniel was thinking. And that changed everything. Because after a person becomes connected to a serious investigation, every old conversation begins to receive a new meaning. A joke that once seemed harmless can suddenly raise questions. A repeated phrase can suddenly sound intentional. A place visited many times can suddenly become important. And that was exactly what happened when investigators began looking through Daniel's enormous collection of videos. At first, they were searching for answers. They wanted to understand who Daniel really was. They wanted to know if there was anything in his online history that could explain what happened. But then they discovered something unexpected. Buried deep inside thousands of uploads was one particular video. A video almost nobody remembered. A video that had been watched only a few times. A video that detectives believed they should have found much earlier. Because inside that forgotten recording was a detail that would completely change the direction of the investigation. Before the questions, before the investigation, and before anyone searched through thousands of videos looking for answers, Daniel Vale appeared to have the kind of life many people hoped to build. He was not the person anyone expected to become the center of a mystery. Growing up, Daniel was described as quiet but creative. He was the type of person who noticed small details that others ignored. While other children wanted to be the center of attention, Daniel often preferred observing the world around him. He enjoyed telling stories. He enjoyed recording moments. And as technology changed, he discovered a place where he could combine both passions. The internet. When Daniel first started uploading videos, there was no sign that it would become anything significant. The early recordings were simple. A young man talking about his day, sharing his opinions, discussing his goals, looking directly into a camera as if he was speaking to an old friend. But slowly, people began connecting with him. They liked his honesty. They liked the fact that his videos did not feel heavily edited or carefully planned. They felt natural. Over time, his audience grew. Thousands of people began following his journey. Some viewers watched every upload. Some left comments saying they felt like they had grown alongside him. To them, Daniel was not just a creator. He was someone familiar, someone they believed they understood. But while the internet saw one version of Daniel, the people closest to him saw another. Friends described him as intelligent and ambitious. Family members remembered someone who could be thoughtful and determined. But they also noticed that Daniel had a habit of keeping certain parts of himself private. There were moments when he would become unusually focused on an idea. Moments when he seemed lost in thought. Moments when he would say something that sounded strange but was quickly forgotten. At the time, nobody considered those moments important. Because when someone appears normal, people naturally search for normal explanations. A strange comment becomes a joke. A strange habit becomes a personality trait. A strange interest becomes nothing more than a personal preference. And that was how the years passed. Then Daniel met someone who would eventually become one of the most important people in his story. Her name was Emily Carter. Emily was different from the people Daniel had known before. While Daniel spent much of his time behind a camera, Emily enjoyed experiencing life away from one. She was outgoing, confident, and someone who easily connected with others. Friends noticed that the two had completely different personalities. Daniel was reserved and analytical. Emily was open and spontaneous. But somehow, they balanced each other. Their relationship slowly became part of Daniel's online world. Viewers who followed his channel watched as Emily appeared in some of his videos. They saw their conversations. They saw their happy moments. And many believed they were watching a genuine connection between two people building a future together. But years later, when investigators reviewed those same videos, they noticed details they had previously ignored. Small moments, brief reactions, short conversations that seemed meaningless at the time. But after everything changed, those moments started raising new questions. Because one sentence Daniel said years earlier would eventually become one of the most discussed parts of the entire investigation. A sentence that thousands of people had heard, but nobody truly remembered. When investigators began reviewing Daniel Vale's old videos, they expected to find answers. Instead, they found questions. Thousands of hours of footage had to be examined. Every upload showed another piece of Daniel's life. At first, nothing stood out. Most of the videos showed ordinary moments, daily routines, personal thoughts, conversations with friends. But as investigators studied the timeline more carefully, they noticed patterns. Certain places appeared again and again. Certain topics kept returning. Certain phrases were repeated years apart. Individually, none of these details seemed important. But together, they created a picture that investigators could not ignore. Was it simply the behavior of someone who documented everything? Or were there hidden meanings behind the recordings? The online community began reviewing the videos as well. Thousands of viewers who had followed Daniel for years started looking back at old uploads. Many admitted they had never noticed anything unusual before. They had watched the videos for entertainment. They never imagined they might one day become part of an investigation. Then detectives discovered one forgotten recording from years earlier. It was short. It was not popular. Most viewers had completely overlooked it. But inside that video was a small detail that changed how investigators viewed everything that came after. A moment that seemed meaningless when it was uploaded, but impossible to ignore after the truth began coming together. And suddenly, every old video had to be viewed differently. For 8 years, Daniel Vale had shared his life with the world. But then, everything changed. Emily Carter suddenly disappeared. At first, nobody believed it was something serious. People disappear for many reasons. Sometimes they need time away. Sometimes they leave without explaining. Sometimes there is a simple answer waiting to be discovered. But as the hours passed, Emily's family and friends became increasingly worried. Her phone stopped responding. Messages were unanswered. The people closest to her realized something was wrong. An investigation began. Detectives started with the usual questions. Who had last seen Emily? Where had she been? Who had spoken to her before she disappeared? And then one name continued to appear. Daniel, the person many people believed knew Emily better than anyone. When investigators spoke with him, Daniel appeared calm. He answered questions. He cooperated. From the outside, everything seemed normal. But there was one thing that caught investigators' attention. While everyone around Emily was searching for answers, Daniel continued uploading videos. The same routine, the same camera, The same familiar style his audience had watched for years. To some people, it seemed unusual. Why would someone continue creating content while a person close to him was missing? But investigators knew appearances could be misleading. They needed evidence, not assumptions. So they went back to the place where Daniel had recorded his entire life. His channel. Every upload became another piece of information. Every conversation became something to examine. Every background detail became something worth checking. Then investigators found a video uploaded during the search. At the time, thousands of people watched it without noticing anything unusual. But months later, after new evidence appeared, detectives returned to that same recording. Because hidden inside those few minutes was a detail that changed the direction of the entire case. A detail that had been available to the public the entire time. But nobody had understood its importance. As the investigation continued, detectives realized they were not only searching for answers in the real world. They were searching through 8 years of Daniel Vale's digital history. His videos became a timeline. His posts became evidence. And every detail had to be examined carefully. Investigators reviewed phone records, location information, interviews, and hours of online content. At first, many details led nowhere. But slowly, small pieces began connecting. A background location in an old video. A conversation that seemed ordinary. A repeated reference that viewers had ignored. Then, someone outside the investigation noticed something unusual. A viewer who had followed Daniel's channel for years pointed out a detail hidden in one of the older uploads. It was something thousands of people had seen before, but nobody had considered important. Detectives looked into the discovery and realized it could answer one of their biggest questions. They returned to information they had previously overlooked. And this time, they saw the videos differently. What once appeared to be random moments from an ordinary life started forming a much clearer picture. The investigation had changed. They were no longer asking what happened. They were trying to understand how long the clues had been there. After months of investigation, the pieces finally began to connect. The videos, the timeline, and the evidence from the investigation all pointed toward a much bigger picture. What viewers once saw as ordinary moments from Daniel's life now appeared completely different. Small details that had been ignored became important. Old conversations were re-examined. Past decisions were questioned. And investigators finally understood that the truth had been hidden in plain sight. But the case was not solved by videos alone. The recordings were only one part of a much larger investigation involving evidence, witness accounts, and careful detective work. For Emily's family, the discovery brought painful answers. For Daniel's viewers, it changed the way they remembered years of content they had watched. Many wondered how something so important could exist online for so long without anyone noticing. The answer was simple. People rarely look for danger inside ordinary moments. Sometimes the things that matter most are hidden behind the things we see every day. After the investigation ended, Daniel's videos became a reminder of how much of a person's life can exist online. The case raised difficult questions. How well do we really know someone through a camera? Can years of recordings reveal things people never intended to show? And how often do we overlook important details because they seem ordinary at the time? For the people who followed Daniel for years, the videos they once watched for entertainment became something completely different. They were no longer just memories. They became a lesson about paying attention, asking questions, and understanding that appearances do not always reveal the full story. Because sometimes the biggest secrets are not hidden away. Sometimes they are sitting in front of everyone, waiting for someone to notice. If you had watched those videos years earlier, do you think you would have noticed something unusual, or would they have seemed completely normal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this mystery, subscribe to Mind Blowing for more stories that uncover the secrets hidden behind ordinary lives. Because the next mystery we explore may be even harder to explain.